You are listening to the Push Media Podcast Network.
This is good shit.
Did you ever see the movie I Am Legend? Because right now, as I talk to you, it kind of feels like the end of that movie. So if you haven't seen the movie, I'm talking about, of course, the great horror movie based on the book that stars Will Smith, not, the world we all have been living in for the last 18 months, which is filled with a lot of similarities. But at the end of the movie, I Am Legend, the vaguely Hispanic, albeit gorgeous woman and her daughter, they survive, and they're driving out of New York City up into, Safe Haven, which in the case of the movie, I guess, was Westchester, New York. But as the movie's ending, there starts a voiceover where the mother who survived the ordeal, she's talking and she's broadcasting a radio signal out just into the world, just hoping somebody will hear it, just saying, hey, we're out here. I don't know who's hearing this, but just know we're here too. And the reason I feel like that scene is relevant to right now is because I'm recording this on the top of a mother-loving building, and as I look down onto the streets below me, about 18 stories down, the streets that cars usually drive on, the streets that people take to work, the streets that people take to go places and do things and be part of the world at large, are completely submerged in water. And they're completely submerged in water following a tropical hurricane, lightning, geostorm, tornado hurricane thing that just hit Pennsylvania again, that just hit areas of land that traditionally don't suffer cataclysmic storms that leave major roads underwater. This is not normal, and this is not going to be another podcast where I just ask everybody, hey, you notice shit's weird? Because honestly, what's the point in me pointing it out? Shit is weird, and shit's going to keep getting weirder. Nothing we could do about that. We should pick a focus. We should pick one of the weird things and break it down. In this case, the weather, what is going on, because the best explanation I can hear as to why tornadoes are hitting areas that don't get hit by tornadoes, why me as a person here in southeastern Pennsylvania am currently looking down upon an entire city being ravaged by a tropical hurricane which is not supposed to hit anywhere really above North Carolina. And why are all people that I know moving to the Carolinas unrelated to the weather? What the fuck is going on? How many teachers does Teach for America need to send down to the Carolinas? Why is everyone moving there? You can't convince me that there is really a reason to go to the Carolinas at all. There's a reason Cam Newton left, and it's because he's not vaccinated and a bad teammate. But back to the weather. Do you remember a couple episodes? Well, I hope you do, and if you don't, here's a refresher. A while back, I talked about HAARP. And HAARP is a government project that falls under the Air Force. And what HAARP stands for is the High Active Auroral Frequency Project. Essentially, they're the people that all the crazy people in your life who you associate with tinfoil hat, Looney Town banana pants nonsense, these people would tell you without even a moment's hesitation that the reason the weather's all fucked up, the reason that we could just make storms happen and do whatever we want to do, the reason we could tell New Orleans you're going to be underwater for a month and George Bush doesn't care about black people, the reason we could do all those things is because of HAARP. And HAARP may or may not control the weather. They may or may not receive large bulks of funding from Bill Gates, none other than America's billionaire coder who also is an expert in climate change and public health and wanted to shoot ash into the sky to prevent climate change. Climate change is fucking dumb. It's a dumb word. I'm also against climate change, and I'm against climate change in the sense that I don't like it. I'm not happy it's happening. I'm not happy it's more humid. I'm not happy there's less alligators or, sea puff penguins or whatever happens when climate change flares up again. I'm not happy my balls is sweaty. My goodness, bad day to be my balls. And that has been the last pretty much month or so. The last month, if you stepped outside, has just felt like you've been living in a sauna that was broken, surrounded by people who only shake hands shirtless in gyms. That the weather is dangerous right now. I saw several car wrecks today, both to and fro my destination. It was so bad, I didn't drive home earlier because, I was about to leave work, the way people do after 5 o'clock. And I'm strolling in my car. I'm happy. I had another productive day. I didn't shit myself in public. I got some work done. It was productive. And then, that old familiar noise, that horn that your phone makes whenever that little girl Amber gets kidnapped, went off on my phone again, and I'm thinking, oh man, we got another missing kid. What did the FBI and the Watchers do now? Turns out, just another tornado, hurricane, lightning, thunderstorm happening. Be aware of that. Just be aware of that. And who decides and how do these notifications that are like these, they're like the superseding announcements that regardless of what you're doing on your phone, you get those National Emergency Service line or whatever. I'm sure HARP's behind that. I'm sure HARP owns that, or they have the NSA run the deployment of whatever the fuck. Because there's people up in Alaska flipping switches, making it rain, and then there's people down in Maryland underwater, underneath bridges, tunnels, or land masses that are finding out who is telling everybody about them, and that's probably me. And this is probably going to be the last episode because I think the jig is up. You can only blow the lid off the weather manipulation thing so many times. Maybe Dubai's behind this. I don't know why Dubai would be behind this, but they seem to be up to some shit, and they seem to have an unlimited supply of resources. Dubai cannot be stopped. And I don't understand why everyone loves it so much. Like, we talk about Dubai like it's the New York City of the Middle Eastern world. It's not. It's a fucking Hotel Marriott in a sandbox, and they let cheetahs drive Jaguar vehicles there, which is the coolest part of the country. The fact that you could have a cat drive a different cat's car, bravo, well done, hats off to you. But other than that, maybe let women live and dress more comfortably. That's just me. And you know what they're not worried about in the Middle East? You know what's one of the few problems we have, or at least I have now here in Pennsylvania, that is not experienced by people in the Middle East? That would be fucking floods. Isn't that ironic? Parts of the world are up in arms because you could be Flint, Michigan and still not have clean water. And I'm not going to stop drawing attention to that. But there's other parts of the world that just are going through droughts, like the entire bulk of the middle part of the globe. And all those people get particularly, moody, we shall say, when they are ever so slightly pushed into discomfort. We'll say, to put it lightly. California, that's a state in our own country. That's just still on fire. That's just been on fire. The state of California, on fire. It's just been on fire. I don't know how many times I can keep saying this. Do you remember when you first heard about the California wildfires? And there was a few videos on Twitter that went viral where you could see people like approaching one of the 36-lane highways in Los Angeles, and then you know how, if you've been there, if you haven't been there, you're a lower than normal class of human being, because everyone knows real human beings are in New York or Los Angeles. But in Los Angeles, you're on those giant lane highways, and you're pretty much the whole time driving through valleys of mountains on every which side of you. And in these videos you saw a couple months ago, I want to say honestly, almost 4 months ago by now, half of these mountains you would see while driving were completely engulfed in flames. I mean, Pompeii level of biblical destruction and infernos of ablaze fire. Look, I didn't need to try and work in the word infernos, but I did, and I like Dan Brown novels. So California, if you may remember, this was a while ago. Like, it was so long ago, I'm trying to remember what was the weather like? Was it still super humid and my balls were, hanging for dear life? Or was it brisk and cool? Was it the fall? Doesn't matter. The point is, several months ago, now that you remember that news story, that moment in time, all of the time that has passed since then, that place has still been on fire. We have had the state with the sixth largest economy in the world, let alone being an American state. Just the sixth largest economy in the motherfucking globe is literally just the state of California. I don't know if that's still accurate because literally everyone's left. But the state that generates the most amount of revenue in our country, at least, has just been on fire for several months consecutively. And all of the people that lived in that state, the titans of industries, the comedians who just got COVID, the Elon Musks, the tech people, all the ones that are responsible for California generating so much money, for being such a behemoth of an economy, they all left. So their state caught on fire. All these guys said we should leave, which is reasonable. If your state is engulfed in a epically scaled biblical destruction of mountains with spontaneous fire, I understand why you'd want to leave. I do not understand why you'd want to go to Texas. Texas is weird. Texas is I don't even have a good analogy yet, but we'll think about it and get back to it. But fuck Texas. And more importantly, Joe Rogan, but more on that later as well. So I get if you'd leave California because your state's on fire and no one really seems to do anything. And now it's been months. But at the very least, the government of California is pushing really hard on big box stores having gender-neutral bathrooms. Because while you're shopping, and you're not going to have a home to go to when you leave Target, because Burbank is in a pile of ashes, at least you can feel morally at peace knowing someone could use the bathroom related to the gender of their feeling at that moment in time. And I know that might have sounded cheeky. That might have sounded like, hey, maybe Colin's not totally cool with gender-neutral bathrooms. Joke's on you. I think the world's a bathroom because that's how everyone's fucking treating it. Climate change is happening. Climate change is real. I hate it. I don't believe it. I'm against it. I wish it would stop. That's what I mean by that when I say I'm anti-climate change. I'm against climate change because it's weird that you're for climate change. Have you ever noticed, and this is kind of indicative of all these really big, large-scale problems, is that like the verbiage associated with them is kind of flipped on its ear, whether you even notice it or not. Like, for example, like if someone were to say to you, I'm pro climate change, you would hear that, and because you live in our weird rules in society and whatnot, you would think, of course, maybe this person recycles, maybe this person only uses the shitty, straws that melt in your mouth and are made of the leftover cardboard of toilet paper rolls. Maybe they're one of those people. Maybe they're a Birkenstock wearing, electric car driving, man bunned, gender neutral bathroom using, soy infused, half stepping moist ass bitch. But really, if you were to just say, hey, I'm pro climate change, that sentence phonetically, if you were to break it down, pro means you support it, and then climate change is, well, the topic at hand. So if you're pro climate change, what that means, if you take away all of our weird American loaded assumptions on words, is that that person supports global warming or climate change or whatever the fuck Al Gore's calling it right now while he's sipping an adrenochrome margarita. I think it's preposterous, really, for people to, at this point in time, and actually, you know what, not even at this point in time, because it's not like I don't even come to this conclusion based on science, even though I'm sure it's available and bountiful, and apparently 9 out of 10 scientists are always ready to tell me about it. But the reason I think climate change is real is just think about conceptually the amount of people that just burst onto the scene, the Industrial Revolution, fucking on your drive home from work tomorrow, look at how much just weird looking smoke from places is just emitted into the clouds and sky. It doesn't look good. And I know there's power plants and there's stuff that has to exist so the stoves in your cities turn on, but it looks like the plants or the factories or wherever those PGW companies or whatever the hell those letters mean, wherever those companies are, where they have the like weird, depressing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 looking maps where they just have these giant factories that just emit noxious fumes into the ozone. You need that in a weird way to be able to get home from work and make food in your oven. But at the same time, just look at it. Just look at the smoke going into the sky. It's like they're electing a new pope almost at nonstop since that factory turned on. Looking at that, that's enough for me to think, maybe human beings had an impact on our environment, on our climate. Because, of course, how would all of these cars and electricity and gas and mining and diamonds and cows and cows and cows. How would all of these things not have an impact on our climate? In fact, the climate is really dictated by what we do. Right? No, it's not at the same time. It's really not. What's funny is that we could affect things like air quality in certain little tiny cubbies of the world, but we really as people can't do a whole lot to change the climate. If we really, really tried to be extra awful destructive, throw every plastic water bottle you've ever drank out of moving car, that level of just morally reprehensible. I mean, truly the lowest of the low in society, the people who don't recycle, like not doing that might make some Sunday in August a little bit more uncomfortable for you and your ass sweat, but it's probably not shortening the lifespan of the globe at large. How arrogant of you. How arrogant of you as a human being to think something as trivial as where you put your garbage is going to affect how hot or cold the earth is? You arrogant son of a bitch. You think depending on where you put your empty Gatorade bottle, you have to wear pants or shorts tomorrow? Come on, bro. Use a little common sense. The word weather. Weather is only defined by it changing. If weather didn't change, the concept of weather wouldn't exist. We wouldn't even need to have an idea as to what weather is. Weather is how you can describe the external conditions in which you as a person have very little control or influence over, and how your body, how your physical meat sack iRobot thing interacts with it, how it makes you feel. Do you step outside and does your meat sack iRobot thing get cold and go brr like Gucci Man, or does it get hot and start sweating from the balls and below? That has nothing to do really, truly, at the end of the day with you. It's nice to think that the straw that you use to suck down your $7 coffee each morning, which was probably at some point the coffee was harvested from some South American country in which the cartel controls the production and cuts off children's digits and fingers, or both. At least you had a cardboard straw that melted in your mouth so you could feel better every time that jizzy cardboard hits your tongue, that at least a sea turtle lived. Man, it's motherfucker sea turtle, okay? It's motherfucker sea turtle. I'm over sea turtles. I'm over sea turtles and I'm over this weather. And now, like this hot take, like this thing that I love to see people do online where they just like to rub imaginary people's faces in a pile of their own make. Of course, make means shit. People like to say now, like, another tornado just hit nearby, let's say somewhere in Philadelphia where it doesn't usually get hit by tornadoes and hurricanes. People will all of a sudden start tweeting or quote tweet a video from some local news, and they'll be like, now do you need any more evidence of climate change? I say to that person, now do you need any more evidence that you're not fun at parties? There's nothing worse than anybody who uses an objective point or some event or something that they had absolutely no responsibility in, no influence over, and nothing they helped happen. Literally just a thing and an event that they found out about, that then people grab it and use it as if it's the climax of this academic dissertation they have been eloquently writing publicly online for months, and no one has ever been following it or reading it at all. Or half the people will interact and will be like, well, of course, you know, the science, actually, the Earth is on a 23.5-degree axis tip, and the way the solstice lines up with your mother's anus, which is, of course, part of the nuclear launch codes formula. But interacting with it is stupid, too. The weather is controlled. HAARP is controlling the weather. To lay it out for you simply, there are guys in Alaska who have made it flood in Philadelphia, and there are people in Maryland covering it up online. And then there's some people like me who are absurdly and for no good reason whatsoever confident that I'm right about that. Because why not? Look up, look at the sky. It's all sprayed. It's destroyed, absolute poison, liquid metal in the clouds, in your arm, in the COVID vaccine shots. And speaking of COVID vaccine shots, because let's just, stick with the only two things that happen in the world anymore, which are biblical storms and pandemics. I heard an interesting theory about COVID vaccines and really more just COVID at large, because it seems like everyone's just fucking stopped trying to figure out how this happened. Like, we're so busy debating the existence of COVID, which at this point, man, if you don't think it exists, I truly think you could just get up, walk outside of your home, walk, and then just keep walking until you forget how to get home. And now you're gone. That's what I think we could do with the people still denying the existence of this shit, the existence of the thing that ruined the world. But something people have stopped asking or stopped trying to get to the bottom to, and boy, did people really give a shit about it for 24 hours, it seemed, was how did this happen? Who did this? Why did American taxpayer money go to the Chinese Wuhan Institute to discover and work on gain-of-function research? Why did the American charity that kind of helped shuttle all of the money over to China apparently seem like a part of the network under Jeffrey Epstein? I don't know, but I can't ask. I've kind of ran out of cards where I get to ask crazy, outlandish questions and people take me seriously. I've played it too much. The people in my life know that I'm probably wildly off base or unbelievably ahead of my time. But at the moment in time in which we're interacting, most of what I'm saying does not matter. So I ask you, people, what do you think? How did this happen? Does it seem weird, too, that, somehow they're linking COVID vaccinations to this storm, to this Hurricane Ida, or Come On Eileen, Hurricane Come On Eileen, which is happening right now? Somehow I've seen, several commercials or mostly again things like online, mostly just Twitter really honestly, or Instagram a little bit, but all these shelters because there's evacuations going on in cities, which is crazy. I mean, there are local township police who are not in major cities. I'm talking the real dick of the trash type cops, who work in suburbs. They're dressed like the cover of Atlantic Tactical magazines. They look like their son's gay and doesn't like them. These types of cops are going into suburban towns and pulling people, whether you want to or not, out of your home because it might get wet. And we're not even Florida. You have no jurisdiction to rip someone out of their home because it's what's best for them, unless, of course, you're in Florida. So what the fuck is going on when police are ripping people out of their houses because it might get damp? And while you're ripped out of your house waiting, hey, by the way, the Red Cross is free COVID vaccines just in case you haven't had a chance. Oh, by the way, where do you plan on putting all these people you evacuated? Because it's not like you can have, the classic Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans where you put everyone on the Red Cross cot in the middle of the 50 fucking yard line, because Kanye's in there busy reconstructing his childhood home and chanting his mom's name until it just becomes a noise that everyone hates. And you know what? I didn't have a strong opinion on Kanye West's mother. I really didn't. In a weird, macabre way, almost kind of not the worst thing she passed, because boy, did we get a lot of good music out of it. Man, that might be a hard point for some people to swallow, but if you think about it, if Kanye's mom's still alive, well, actually, I guess it would balance out, right? If Kanye's mom was still alive, we wouldn't have Through the Wire, which would be a fucking tragedy. But then we also wouldn't have this bullshit album that this 27-track long digital representation of flavorless chewing gum. You can't put all the evacuees while they wait for their propaganda shot to re-enter their home. You can't put them in the Superdome because Kanye's there busy having a fucking listening party. And Kid Cudi's there wearing a Davy Crockett hat. Goodness gracious. We are worried about the wrong things and not asking questions about the right things either. For the love of all that is holy in this world. And honestly, you know what? This almost feels like we're teetering on apocalyptic. You've become numb to the fact there's a pandemic. You have. And that's not bad. Honestly, that's a testament to the human will that you can adapt and try, and no matter how weird the world's going to get, in some way, shape, or form, enough time will go by where in your head you can, rationalize and compartmentalize and then feel like, hey, this is what it's been all along. Which at the same time is probably a weakness that, us as people could have exploited. But you're numb to the fact there's a pandemic going on almost 2 years at this point. So the fact that there is an not imaginary, Jesus, excuse me, Fauci lied and people died. I got to stop with the Freudian slips. The fact that there is an invisible virus, which is a molecular, cancerous, evil. It's this. What's the word I'm looking for? So a virus is of course it exists under a microscope, but it's also in the everyday world. It's invisible. It's like this spell almost. It's like this fungus that's borderline spiritual that jumps host to host like a vampire until it consumes itself or it doesn't become strong enough to continue to try and keep jumping to hosts. So we have essentially a spiritual vampire fungus infecting the world at large with no signs of slowing down and a lot of signs of getting stronger. On top of that, that's baseline, folks. That's where we're at before we continue on. You know what I'm saying? Now that we've established that, now there are going to be scales and natural disasters. There's going to be storms that are unprecedented for the areas in which they're happening, resulting in highly irregular consequences, like car dealerships having cars flown through windows. And we're not talking about Oklahoma. I do not live in a flat state. Thank God, my right as American, I do not live in a flat-chested state. I live in America, God damn it. And America is thick, girthy. I'm sorry, Pennsylvania. Man, I guess I'll stop with the thick and girthy thing because I tripped over the words there. But the point is, what I'm getting at here is, the state I live in is kind of mountainous. Not exactly ripe conditions for cyclones and tornadoes to touch down, let alone almost every month. And then, now I've become personally, I can only speak for me and anyone else I so choose because it's my show, but I can only speak for myself that I've become conditioned almost like a Pavlovian way to the Amber Alert sound on my phone now. The National Emergency System thing. That's just another thing. I can now if I hear it, because it goes off pretty much once a week now in my pocket, I can look up, and depending on how much available sunlight, I can either determine if there is an act of God occurring with the weather outside where I'm standing, or if another child has been kidnapped, probably by the FBI. That's just something I've adapted into my normal routine. That's impressive on one hand. It's scary on the other, because while it's incredible the things that a human can make normal, make part of their everyday life, it also really makes you wonder, just how much can this be pushed? And we'll just keep adapting and keep filing under normal and act accordingly and move onward. Because if we don't figure out maybe which questions or which news stories or which things to actually pick and focus on and investigate more than just here or there in a passing, thumb stroke on your phone, you're going to have a hard time keeping track of what's already out of shape in the first place. And then once that happens, of course, once it becomes time to go back to normal, whatever that is, you'll have already forgot. There won't be a record of what was normal. There will be parts of it, there will be chunks of it just completely gone from your memory. It'll just disappear, and you'll forget what it was or what things were. And maybe some of it's good. Maybe some of the things that we'll do away with whenever, God willing, alhamdulillah, we come out of this, pandemic. Maybe some of the things that happen are good. Maybe airplanes make you sick less because we don't let racists or conservatives on them moving forward. Or maybe people wash their hands more and other diseases and sicknesses go down. Maybe there are some unforeseen positive consequences of this. Odds are there will be a few. Probably won't be that noticeable to you until someone points them out. And the people pointing out these unexpected positive consequences will be the people trying to distract you from the fact that you have forgotten chunks, entire blocks, entire building blocks of what was normal in the first place. But hey, at least you can feel a little less dirty shaking someone's hand now. Maybe that's good. And the masks, fuck it, just wear it. Just get over it, everybody. I mean, stop talking about it. Stop bitching about it. Stop going on an impassioned soliloquy in the gas station line because someone asked you to pull it up above your nose. Pull your mask up above your nose. Why don't you pull your pants down? If you really want to catch people off guard, the next time you hear that, try and feed that line to somebody, to some blowhard asshole who's trying to put up a good fight and stop the socialists from taking your guns and immune system. Pull up your mask. Pull down your pants. Change my diaper. Just get weird with them. Lock eyes. Lock eyes with these weird... anyone that you're even remotely unsure of out in the wild that you see, lock eyes with and just say something strange to them. Like, hey, have you noticed the world is slowly slipping below sea level? Will you help me find my mom? Really strange, off-putting things like that. Because everyone knows the first rule of suppressing an assailant is getting inside their head. I think if we've learned anything over the last year, it's probably been that message. If you really want to fuck with people, if you really want to make people come apart at the seams, if you really want to make countries, entire groups, and civilizations come apart at the seams, all you got to do is get inside the average person's head. All you got to do is make the average person slowly start to lose their mind, slowly start to forget what they're entitled to, what normalcy is. And with each passing day, we get further away from it. We are going to have a harder time getting back. There are children's fables dating back to medieval Germany about bread trails. People, come on now. Joe Rogan is literally 5'8", and he literally has COVID now. Ha 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 ha. Good, I gave it to him. I also gave Bob Costas pink eye at the Sochi Olympics. Psych, I didn't do any of those things. But Joe Rogan still has COVID. But not to worry. Onnit has come out with a brand new line of ivermectin and fish tank solution to pump up in him, that guy, intravenously in front of a host, in front of a guest on his show. Also, I used to like Joe Rogan. I really did. I think he serves a purpose. I think in a lot of ways, he's a catalyst for people to get their minds going, to start thinking. He is the perfect type of trained, useful idiot who can have interesting thoughts, and that's about as far as he'll go with them. He'll make horrific follow-up points, and his logic will usually be flawed, and he'll probably be the type of person that is going to sell out for millions and millions of dollars when you already had millions and millions of dollars, which is like, if you're going to sell out, I can respect a sellout. I really can. I'm not even kidding. I got nothing but respect for Nickelback. In fact, I think people are very much unfair to them. Next time you look at this photograph, I just couldn't help it. Honestly, Nickelback, fine. Truly just fine. Not a big deal. But they didn't have shit before they became Nickelback, who sold out in however way they did it. I don't even know the fable of Nickelback. But what I'm getting at is, like, if you're going to sell out, have a reason to. Don't just sell out for the fuck of it. What are you doing at that point? What kind of example are you setting? And I know it's unfair to put any public figure to make them wear the mark of, like, role model, because some people don't want to be a role model. I get that, and it's not necessarily your job. It's your responsibility, but it's not your job. You have plenty of responsibilities that aren't jobs. But if you're already making hundreds of millions of dollars, you're already far and away the most watched, impactful, and influential program in American history by the numbers. That's just the numbers. Why would you then sell out to some Swedish company for probably in the long term less money than you would have made staying on your own. Like, what are you being offered there? Like, what's going on? And then once you see someone that you used to respect, and I don't want to say like I'm that guy who's like the second Joe Rogan went to Spotify, he sold out, man. Like, I'm not here to defend artistic integrity, because artistic integrity, like gas stations, should be convenient when you need them. There's also instances in which you blow right by that gas station because there's already shit in the tank and you got somewhere to be and you got a goal and you want to get there. So I understand that. But when you're already at your destination and there's already gasoline in your car, why the fuck are you trying to put more gas in it? Because eventually that, much like the wildfires in California, will spontaneously combust at any moment. Why? Why would you do that, Joe? And now look at yourself, telling everyone and their mom not to get vaccinated, and now you're getting a Texas serving of coronavirus, courtesy the American taxpayer dollar. The American taxpayer dollar, which you're trying to avoid paying by moving to Texas and the income tax, you sell out, selfish, money-grubbing short fuck. Your guests suck now, too. And I have a sneaky suspicion you might have fucked Tim Dillon. Or Tim Dillon might have fucked you. And I'm really just saying that for outlandish reasons, and therefore I could tag it and throw their names in and hopefully get a little more traffic on the episode. But allegedly, Joe Rogan fucked Tim Dillon. That's a fact. Allegedly. And both of them contracted coronavirus from it. And we should really be keeping an eye on Peru, because I think they have a coronavirus strain that is turning people into the zombies from I Am Legend. And we should really keep an eye on the people up in Alaska who, despite saying they're in the Air Force, you don't see any planes. In fact, they're scared of flying. Maybe keep an eye on those guys and see what switches they're turning on. Maybe lick your thumb, put it up in the air, and gauge the wind patterns. And definitely, if you're in Maryland, keep an eye on fucking everything, because that state, I'm not even entirely convinced exists in the way you think it does. Half of the state of Maryland is underground. The other half is filled with rednecks. And then there's a secret half, which is just the NSA. And the NSA is just run by reptilian space lizards. And that's why they're trying to help cover up the weather manipulation, because they're just trying to make the climate a little more comfortable for their amphibious nature. And as you all know, human beings started off as tadpoles, right? According to the British guy who married and fucked his first cousin, Chucky Darwin. Chucky. Does evolution, or do you have any big bad science that could explain why the fuck I'm worried about a tornado in Pennsylvania? I don't have any answers. I have a whole lot of questions. I have a few people attempting to answer some of them for me in my life. But half of me thinks maybe they're lying too, just because I could be easy to fuck with. And I definitely am. I'm definitely easy to fuck with. But that's because, like, I trust people. Since when did that become an awful thing? Being trusting of people. People, that's another thing too. People love to hang their hats on, like, man, I don't trust anybody. You gotta look out for you. I don't trust nobody. Well, one, why are you telling me this? Because you're trusting me enough to share your secrets, your recipe, how your sausage is made. But then also, you're just going to be lonely as shit. And you're not going to learn anything. And then if you don't have people to, like, bounce ideas off of, people are like friends, or people in your life are also like markers that help you keep track of time passing. What's normal, what's not. Like, hey, friend, do you remember when we could eat inside? No. There were these things called restaurants where you ate inside of them. Yeah, no, you don't remember this? It was only like 2 years ago, before coronavirus, and the bat ate the pig, and old lady swallowed a fly, and then the whole world got a disease, and the NBA and Space Jam 2. Yeah, no, I have absolutely no memory of that. I only remember eating outside of restaurants on the street in August, sweating my balls off. Isn't that what fine dining is? Isn't fine dining wearing a pair of basketball shorts, flip-flops, no socks, and ordering a creme brulee at 3:30 p.m. on a sidewalk under the hot sun. I don't know much about fine dining. I don't know much about the weather, to be honest. Really not a geologist. Which is also irrelevant because they study rocks and dirts. What the fuck does that have to do with the weather? I'm not a meteorologist. I don't think meteorologists are scientists. I don't. Because you cannot convince me that there is an entire class, a subsect of scientists called meteorologists who focus on the weather. But if you are a part of this small, chosen, select few group of scientists, you also all happen to be extremely attractive people. What are the odds of that? Why is it everyone telling me the weather, everyone who claims to be a meteorologist, is hot as tits? Or they're like an old white dude with a bow tie just for shits and gigs. But for the most part, all of these meteorologists, all of these scientists, far too attractive to be legit, in my opinion. It's the same reason I don't think there's journalists on Fox News. There's a point where you are far too attractive to contribute anything useful in terms of like noteworthy events or journalism to society. If you're that attractive, shut up and look pretty. And be thankful for that. Do you know how exhausting it is not being gorgeous and actually trying to get to the bottom of shit? It is taxing. It is difficult. Speaking of positive, consequences that maybe come out of COVID, maybe the fact that we never take our masks off makes people fuck more because half of your ugly, dumb face is covered. Maybe. Just thinking. I don't know. Just spitballing here. Do you remember before coronavirus, you would go to the airport and you would always see, Asian travelers always have masks on? Wow, okay. Maybe I shouldn't have said always and shouldn't have generalized all Asian countries because Asian countries could be Russia and India too. But you know what I'm talking about, so just fuck you and just let me go on this point. But do you remember when you would see that and you would think like, or at least me, I'd get offended. I'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? Like our American air quality is too concerning for you? The country that has at least 2 or 3 cities, I'm pretty sure, that literally the entire buildings and structures and cars are just made up of smoke, are not even tangible structures. An entire gaseous city filled with your pollution. Pretty sure that's at least 3 cities in mainland China. And then you're going to fly here to America and be worried about breathing freedom, about breathing good quality, albeit not the best, but still serviceable freedom? Fuck you. And then it turns out the person in the airport that overheard me having that speech to myself, I must have said all of it out loud. They must have got offended, and they must have went back to China, told their superiors, and started planning.